everybody, can you believe we're more than halfway through this class? Now we're gonna kick it up a notch. We're gonna be pushing through a lot of material, specifically this week. So I want to give you a video. Excuse the attire, but I just wanted to get this video out. Well, one thing is to show what we're going to be doing this week, and to what to prepare yourselves for in this week to come. So hopefully, you're starting off in the morning. You had your cup of coffee. You're logging in. You're looking at this and sort of thinking what you need to do this week. The biggest thing I could say is read, read, read. You have 3 very intense chapters. Normally in a 19-week class, I spend quite a bit of time on each one to really hone in what's happening in colonial life. But we're going to be doing it in a week. In fact, we're going to be doing the colonial aspect in about 3 days, and we're going to look at the Middle Passage and the life of Equiano in a couple days as well. So the biggest thing, like I said, is read, read, read. I could do lectures of all this stuff, but I think you'd be bored to tears. It's much easier for you to get through a quasi-interesting textbook, as far as textbooks go, right? It's not too bad of a read. And at least there's pictures and things with the electronic version. Has anyone gotten a hard copy online? If so, let me know, and how much you paid for it. It's pretty handy. And if you take 17B, this is a good class. Most of instructors at Shasta, I've kind of converted them to the ways. A lot of them are using this, I believe. There's some older ones, but I think this one's pretty good. And if you saw my production of history video, I think this one is more up to date than a lot of them. But again, that's subjective, and that's my view. So your view is just as important on that. Last week, what you are going to get is tomorrow on Tuesday, after my microphone arrives. As you could kind of hear, it's tingy. I don't like making videos with that sound. I think it's distracting for a longer video, but should in the mail. This is a 3-day weekend, so no mail today here in England, but tomorrow I should be getting my microphone, so I'll be making some short videos. One is to recap last week, sort of the main stuff of going over our discussion, largely, of why were the Americas conquered with relative ease, and you looked at gun, germs, and steel, and also 1491, the big arguments of that, and so you could kind of see, going beyond the style of the writing or the length of the reading that you got, what evidence do you think, and from the textbook as well, what evidence did you think would be the reason for conquistadors to be so successful in the Americas? It was fun reading those. I'm getting through, I'll be grading those, and I'll be giving you some feedback by the end of the week on all this stuff that you've done so far. So you can be prepared for that. A recap video of the stuff last week, of what to kind of really get out of the chapter 2. And then this week, I'm going to do a couple videos just to kind of really draw out the information of what you need for chapters 3, 4, and 5. So, this is colonial life. We're looking more deeper of what it was like in the Americas, specifically what's going to become United States, and how the identity of colonial life does sort of bleed into. In history, we call that the longue durée. It's a French term of it's a continuation. So there's a continuation of colonial life that then all of a sudden has these ruly colonials that then create a whole new country, and those ideals continue on. And you see that today, don't you? You see sort of the conflict of this identities that start to form in colonial time happening in the news today, and I think that's really an interesting thing to start looking at. So we're going to look at your discussion. I think will be fun. So it's kind of a historical narrative of putting yourself in the shoes of what you're reading. So as you're reading about colonial life, think about, okay, if I was one of these people, what would life be like for me here? And put yourself in the shoes of someone in that time. You get to choose what that person's is, what they're doing, who they are, why they're there, and all that stuff. And you're going to be writing a little letter, page or two, back to your friends or family, and those friends or family are your small group, who are going to be reading your narrative of what's happening here. Okay, so as much detail as you can. You'll be graded. The higher grade is for those that are really putting in information from the reading, putting in information that you are seeing in these chapters, and accurately. So again, it's your subjective look at it. So you're pulling information from each of the chapters, and you're creating a story based on what you are looking at colonial life to be like in this Wednesday discussion. Okay, so that'll be due Wednesday, and that'll give you a couple days to read those, Thursday, Friday. And then by midnight Friday, really, it'd be nice to have it before, maybe when you turn in your next discussion, also maybe comment on the other people's as well, of what they're saying, and see how it compares and differs or is the same of your kind of narrative. What's sort of some of the similarities that you all got, or some drastic different things you're looking at in colonial life. So that'll be interesting for Wednesday. Friday, we're going to switch gears. We're going to be looking at Equiano, and it's your first primary source, really, writing source. Of course, you looked at primary sources of artifacts and things in chapter 1 and 2, but now we're getting into a writing written of the time. This is a primary source. It is a first-hand account of someone who experienced firsthand the horrors of the Middle Passage, right? So here's a man who was taken from his home in Africa and stolen away, brought into the slave system, eventually is educated, where he writes his own story to a specific audience. And who that audience is interesting to think about. What he's trying to tell that audience, what story he's trying to say, what his memory is of his experience, all that plays into this writing of the story of Equiano. If you've seen the movie Amazing Grace, a good movie, if you're a fan of Sherlock Holmes, it's Benedict Cumberbatch, one of his first movies really early on. And it's a fantastic film. And Equiano plays a role in the movie as well. So if you know the song Amazing Grace, you know that the guy who wrote that was a slave trader himself, and his personal beliefs, becoming a Christian, and all the horrors that he did, and the guilt he did of being a major slave trader. He found that what can save him is grace. So and that's Amazing Grace's story. So the song Amazing Grace tied into the slave trade. The movie Amazing Grace brings up this character Equiano, so you can see that in a historical movie piece. But this is what we're reading, is the actual words of Equiano, the actual words of the slave who has gone through the situation. So I think it should be interesting, and you can kind of illuminate and see. Now, an interesting thing to think about too that I didn't add is today's, there is slavery still today, isn't there? There's human trafficking that's happening at an unprecedented scale still. And if you're in Redding, or if you're anywhere in California, one of the biggest places in the world is along I-5 there. It's a very huge route for human trafficking. And so it's an interesting thing of the perseverance and the strength of this individual, and tying that into stories that you might hear of people who are survivors of human trafficking today. So it's another example of bringing history from the past and using that experience and tying it into human story and humor, and the characteristics of people today. So Equiano's story should last and echo into what's happening in the world around us today. So you'll have a reading quiz as well. That's created and posted. It should come live on Wednesday. But I wanted you to focus on the stuff due today. So you have a quiz. A lot of you still have the quiz to do from last week today. That's up and running. Read other people's posts in your discussion. I have that posted tonight by midnight. And then tomorrow, start really looking at this next material of chapters 3, 4, and 5, getting into discussion for Wednesday, the discussion for Friday. If you have time, look at the videos I make just to kind of help synthesize it. Some of you are great learning. You could just read it and get through. Some of you, I know, it might be helpful just to have a little bit of oratory and visuals in a video. So that's why I make it. Whatever works for you. If you have comments or concerns, please let me know. I will be gone this afternoon, which is your morning, but I'll be back tonight, and I'll be online tomorrow. So if you want to chat sometime this week, we could do that. If there's any concerns, or if email's working, just continue to do so, okay? Very awesome. Have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic week, and we'll be in touch, and look forward to hearing all that you have to say on the Wednesday and Friday discussion. Bye-bye.